Right. No, our slogan is we're building an electric truck for today's cities and tomorrow's generations. So, well, in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. We're building an electric truck. But I must say that is not really the business. The business is a service business. So we're not don't see ourselves as a manufacturing company, but building the truck that doesn't exist today is the tool for us to be able to do the service business that will be our business for the future. Mm. Well, you know, if you want to do something new, etc., you cannot listen to everybody saying it's impossible. You have to have some sort of confidence in your abilities. If they are built on some solid ground or not, it's a different thing. But why I think there is an opportunity in what we're doing right now is that there is a technology shift. It's a technology shift from the diesel engine, the combustion engine that has been the prevailing engine, of course, for the last, 100 years, and to electric. Mm. And it's in these technology shifts that often the big ones, the established ones, take some time, or in some cases are not capable of adapting. But in that shift, that's when you have, as somebody from outside the industry, you often have a chance. And that, I think, with the experience I have, I don't think this is a more difficult bet than any of my other ventures. I honestly think it's almost an easier bet than any of the other things, and more probable than many of the other ventures you see popping up today. So I don't see that as yes, it's an established industry. There are established players, but I think we will have a very good chance to succeed. You mentioned Elon Musk, and I think not only for me, but for the whole industry, if it's automotive or trucking or something, in the established players' mind, I think the alarm bell in my mind, the sort of the light, I would say, was when Elon Musk launched the Model 3. That was 1st of April 2016. We all know what happened, 300,000-400,000 orders in a few weeks for a car that didn't exist. That is obviously a big sign there is something in this. Normally, the German car manufacturers would launch any new ideas in the Frankfurt Fair. All of them rushed to the Paris Fair in September the same year, and they all said, Mercedes, we should have 10 new electric cars by 2025, and Volkswagen, of course, with a need to polish their reputation after the diesel scandal, they said they should go all electric, etc., etc. So the car side has already changed. Then it takes a few years for these guys to actually, go into and produce, etc., etc. But that's a done deal. For me then, as I said, as a small entrepreneur, you see a big shift, something is happening. Is there an opportunity to jump in here somewhere and create some value? The first thing I looked at was charging infrastructure, and we actually spent some time on that. We talked to some customers, etc., etc. After, some analysis, etc., and a few months of that, we said we didn't really feel that we could get a good business out of it. When we then came into the trucking business at the time, and honestly still, the big OEMs or the big players had not done almost anything, and today not very much. So that's the part of the market. You see the change, technology change. Where can you find a foothold in this market? And that's the foothold we have seen, and that's what we are exploring. Well, firstly, you mentioned that, but as I don't come from the industry, have not really been very interested in trucks all my life, etc. you have to learn something first. You have to understand or try to understand as rapidly as possible how this industry works. And of course, if you want to do something new, it's not necessarily how the industry works today, but how do you see it could work in the future. In any case, whatever you do, I think it's important to listen to the customer. The beauty of what we are doing is that we know the customer. It's not like if you have a new, very smart, whatever software product and you're trying to look for the customer. In our case, the beauty is that we know the customer. They exist, they are there, they're driving diesel trucks today. So what I did, I then got in contact with one of the very early companies in Europe that actually did they produced electric trucks by taking a diesel truck and taking away the diesel driveline and putting in an electric driveline. They had done this, it's a Dutch company called Emos, and they had done that for a few years, and they had probably 200, 250 trucks on the road. So by that, that it could work. And then that gave me the opportunity to go out to actually sell this, or try to sell this to the customers in Sweden. So I visited, and the good thing was they were interested, so all of them opened the door and let me in. And then you get, hands-on from the customer. What are the considerations? What is important for them, etc., etc. So that's how I started to phase one, learning the industry or understanding the customers, the customer needs, thoughts, etc. Then, of course, your next step is that you want to go from there and form your own product or service or whatever it is. So that's phase number one, or number two. So in my case, I saw that due to what we are doing is really we totally redesign a truck. We have a very focused market niche. So that's also an advantage for you as a small person. You don't have necessarily to serve everybody. You can go for a niche where you think it's the lowest hanging fruit. So that indicates something of your design or what your product should be. And then in our case, we saw that if somebody wants to take this or go for something new, they wanted, in their perspective, to reduce their risks and their need of learning new things, etc. For a number of reasons. One is, of course, competence and knowledge. Another is credibility, etc. I needed to complement my own skills with somebody with solid, automotive, manufacturing, etc. skills of that, with that skill set. Right. So I was lucky to actually in the INSEAD network. I got in contact with my business partner and co-founder Kjell Wallön, and his background is then more than 20 years with automotive manufacturers like Ford, Volvo, and Polestar. He has been in the leading plant manufacturing or plant construction teams. He has experience from China, which everybody is looking at, of course, as everything is coming out of China, etc. So he has a very broad experience of that. So I think we complemented each other, our skills very well. He has been then an employee all his life, so he has not so much, or didn't have so much of the entrepreneurial, not practical anyway, even if his mind is very entrepreneurial. So, and that was my first recruit, you can say, or something like that. With that, we then approached the difficulty with this kind of venture is to get anywhere, you need somebody. It's not like a tech startup where often you need a couple of very smart guys, a few laptops and a stack of pizzas, and they basically can create a product or a service. In our case, you have to build something. It costs a couple of million euros before you basically have something. So it's quite an odd size. It's not family and friends you know, 200,000 euros or something, we have to have at least 1 zero more. So it's a difficult size. But anyway, so I managed to get that far, find some investors that thought this seems to be a good bet, and off we went. So the first thing we did was really trying to find the best suppliers or partners or whatever you call it. So we were scouting around Europe for the best engineering company, the best designers, and so on. So yeah, that was really the starting point, finding them, negotiating with them, getting them understand what we wanted to do, and commission the work. Parallel to that, when we talk about the organization, actually the third person into our team was our communication manager, because I think in today's world, that's very important. How you build your image, how you communicate to the market, of course, all kind of social medias, etc., etc. So yeah, that is important for all kind of things. Of course, customers, investors, employees, general public, etc., etc. So yeah, I found, even if it's not in my background, I found in this venture that very useful, and I think I recommend anybody doing anything that you have to really think about your communication strategy. Well, in general, I think we have executed quite well on our plan. You have, what should I say, of course, on the recruitment side, for a number of reasons, I wanted to get some, our team is then, Michelle and I, is experienced, to put it nicely. So we want a mixed team. So we wanted some younger people in the team. We wanted some other competencies. Fundraising, I think, for any startup, or most startups anyway, if you want to accelerate, you can do it the old way. You build one track and then you say make some money out of that, and you build 2 tracks, etc. That, I think, is a losing strategy in today's world. So you need to fundraise. And on the other hand, as we all know, there is quite a lot of money out there. You just have to position yourself right, etc. So anyway, the third, in principle, the fourth person we recruited was also from INSEAD, but anyway, our CFO. Right. And I had the fortune, or I should say like this, that I then, when I got the funding, I focused quite early on to the 2 major cities in Europe, so it's London and Paris, as our markets. We needed to know more about the customer base, who they are, what truck size is, etc., a lot of things. So market intelligence. So I was fortunate that INSEAD, in the MBA programs, if you start in January, you have 2 months of summer break. Right. So I went down to INSEAD and I recruited a couple of people, 1 French, 1 English, and actually Chinese, to do these studies over the summer. So that was the second phase. The good thing with that, one of the English person, he had a background from investment banking and auditing and so on, Deloitte and JP Morgan. So I saw him very qualified as the CFO. Right. And then later we have also recruited a CEO that comes from the industry. So he has been on the buyer side of these kind of services for the last 8-9 years. Stumbling blocks, well, you always have a lot of small things. There are bumps in the road all the time. It's your task and challenge, and I think very fun to try to mitigate these different things. But none of the things that you cannot get around or climb over. We are fortunate to be in a sector where I think we are doing. If the more successful we are, the more global good we're doing. Obviously, the less pollution, whatever you are producing, the safer you make the cities, etc., the better it is for everybody. the less noise you have if you are walking on a street in anywhere, etc. So that, I shouldn't say that, that's something we always should have in the back of our mind, that if you try to, you always have to sell, and you have to sell to everybody, and you shouldn't be shy of selling. And I'm always trying to say to people, any customer that we then manage to convince has a global good impact. So that's one thing. It cannot be your overriding objective, because then I think you are steering in the wrong way. But generally, if I see where we want to be in a few years' time, one of the biggest, or hopefully the biggest, or something provider of what should I say? We call it truck as a service. So basically, tracking services in as many cities as possible. Most likely our base in Europe, but maybe also the US. I think the more successful we are, the better, force for good, I think, is in the spine of our business. So we replace something that is less healthy. We replace something that is less good and work environment for the people. The cities, some of the cities, and I think it's a good objective, like Paris, in principle, they want to get rid of all cars in Paris. But it's still, you will still have shops, you will still have restaurants, you will still have supermarkets, etc., to service the inhabitants of the city. So you still forever, more alike. I mean, for the next foreseeable future, you need transport into the city. And then you want that to be as disruptive as possible, as low noise level as possible, as least polluting as possible, and also the safest for the inhabitants of the cities, the pedestrians, the bikers, whoever. So that's our objective.